afternoon, friends, and welcome to 5 by 5 with CompStak. My name is Brian Caldwell, and I'm going to be the segment host of this new segment where we focus on local commercial real estate insights. We'll have a local guest, usually a broker on the segment, and it'll be digestible insights in a time-conscious format. So today's guest, we've got Tim Wright here from Cushman Wakefield, Atlanta. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And before we jump in with Tim, we're going to get into our pulse check, which features CompStak data from our real estate intelligence team, and that gives us some things to talk about in the segment. So it looks like lease terms are converging between our CBD markets, which are going to be Buckhead, Midtown, and Downtown, and our non-CBD markets, which for this purpose, we're talking about Cumberland, Central Perimeter, and North Fulton. Historically, the CBD markets reached about a 6.3 average lease term maximum. Non-CBD is about 4.6 years at their peak. And as I said, they've been kind of converging together as of late with the deals that we're seeing signed. Really about late 2024, early 2025, fundamentals in the market shifted towards a more landlord favorable environment. So some things that we've seen there include free rents declining. So in the CBD, they dropped from about 7.5 months to 5 months, and non-CBD markets from about just over 6 months to just over 5 months. TIs have also dropped a little bit from between $60 and $45 per square foot in the CBD to $45 a square foot, and in non-CBD markets from about $36 to around $30 per square foot. Lastly, it looks like the market is really kind of signaling a recovery here in the office, Class A office in Atlanta, which I'm sure you're excited to see. I'm excited to see as a local resident here, and we'll dive into kind of your feedback a little bit on that. So, Tim, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Sure. Yeah, I'm an office tenant rep at Cushman Wakefield. I've been there a couple years now. I've been in it since before COVID, and my practice is primarily focused on in-town office users, so the tenants. So if it's a law firm, if it's a CPA group, if it's an engineering company, just pretty right down the middle office users, I help a lot. So then there's the other side of my practice that we've started, helping people buy assets or investment properties. We have a couple of listings that are come through kind of friends and family referrals, and working on a senior living deal right now. So that's like the stuff that's intellectually, I don't know what the right word is, and interesting to me. It's like I want to learn about these different, I call them the food groups. Like you have all these different product types. So, but yeah, most people, like if you follow me on LinkedIn or see content that I pushed out, it's very office heavy. It's very, I love history and just kind of background of how Atlanta came to be. And so I post a lot of, interesting photos of architecture and whatnot. So, that's me. I've got a 5-month-old son, been married for 6 years. We live in town and, grew up down in Peachtree City.
Okay.
So Golf Cart Town, if you've ever heard of it.
Familiar with it. Yep.
Yeah. Great spot.
Nice place.
So, that's me and what I do, at just a really high level.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Tim has a great segment of his own. What's it called?
I don't think we have a name.
No name. Okay.
I don't know. I've been kind of playing around. I've got a handful of friends that are big developers and one that worked for Tom Cousins for decades. And I just kind of sat down with him and turned a camera on. And, so I didn't have a name. We've been going for like 7 or 8 months now. So, maybe it'll get a name soon enough.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, kind of to segue into what you're seeing in the market, what's driving the momentum right now? If you can talk about any kind of tailwinds that you're seeing and also any headwinds that you kind of foresee in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like we're moving. It's a new year. I mean, it's halfway through the year, but like, I guess end of last year, and everybody sees this in their own industry, is the whole election cycle and like people just holding their breath, wondering what's happening. But I just feel like there was a ton of momentum at the top of the year. And then of course the tariff thing hit this like weird pause button on everybody for almost the entire month of April. At least that was what I felt. I've heard people commenting, if you're watching this and you closed the biggest deal of your life in April, congrats to you. But I've just from the Atlanta perspective and people I know, that was a real thing. So there's always uncertainty, and people they're like, okay, am I going to sign a 5-year commitment or 10-year? Like, can I do that right now? Where are we going to be? I do feel like overall it is becoming so evidently clear the office is here, and people are getting more and more back into the office. So it used to be like, hey, we've got, a good mix of people that are all remote. Maybe they have a couple days in the office, but it seems like standard is now 3 days. And then people talking like probably next year we're going to go to 4 days. But we've all seen the headlines, Amazon, Home Depot, all that. It's like 5 days, get back in the office. We're going. And yeah, it is just jobs market's changed a lot. Like they kind of hold the cards. So yeah, the efficiency of companies is getting challenged, and they're becoming more efficient. So they want to get the maximum input from their employees. So that's it. Yeah, it's good for business.
It is good for business. Good for both of our companies.
Yeah.
Great. Kind of next question here. If you can look, 6 months to a year, even 2 years into the future, is there anything interesting that you're seeing that we need to keep an eye on, positively or negatively?
Yeah, I think, the dynamic that we've seen over the last year is companies, if so they play the game of, we need an office, but maybe we don't need as much space. We can right size, and if we're gonna have an office, we want to be in a nice place, that has nice amenities. It's a good spot that our employees are excited to go into the office to be at. So with that size reduction, they can afford maybe a more expensive building, and so the short of it is the top of the market has become very tight, and those numbers. I mean, I've been talking about us making a report for months now, but like top of the market, Atlanta, Midtown. I mean, your vacancy rate is. I mean, if you look at like a CompStak
I
report
won't
of like
hold it against you.
vacancy, it'll say like, hey, this area is 20% vacant, but oh, by the way, there's a 1.5 million foot building that's totally empty, and it's totally skewing the numbers. But if you take the buildings that people want to be in that can transact, I mean, it's probably less than 10%. So where I'm getting at, the interesting trend is those buildings are tightening up, and companies are going to start, they're going to be like, I don't know if I can pay 60, 70. I mean, over in other markets, it's getting over $100 a foot for some of the nicer stuff. They're like, okay, maybe I can start looking at the second tier, third tier buildings, which for the past year or 2 years has been not even a question. Like it has been the tale of two cities, the flight to quality. That everybody's just been focused on that. So the say Class B, Class C just has not gotten any of the love. So I foresee those are going to get really tight. Landlords are going to pull back on their concessions that they're offering. Rates are going to keep going. So people will be forced to look at other buildings that they might not have. The other dynamic is there are no new office buildings coming in probably the next 4 years. Like there's a couple that are still wrapping up or delivering, but as far as new product, again, that people want, that's where the demand has been. There just hasn't been any spec office buildings getting kicked off. Maybe there's a couple build to suits. Maybe there's some that have, a key tenant and they have 100, 200,000 feet that they still have to fill up. But I mean, it's going to be a while before we see a spec office building. So I think it's going to be interesting how this pans out. But the REITs they're doing fine. Got some good buildings that are getting filled up.
Yeah. Good to hear. Absolutely. What's the biggest surprise, or what has surprised you most in the last year or two that you've seen?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. We've seen, over COVID, the costs went up, lead times went up, and they didn't really ever seem to come back down for construction projects, especially in the office world. So a 5-year TI allowance used to get you a pretty good build out. Now that's like, you might be able to move a couple walls, paint carpet and stuff, but I mean, it's pushed the lease terms in order to get a nice custom space. It's a 7-year or a 10-year. There have been a handful of deals this past year that 15, 16 years, that was always kind of like the roof. But I mean, there was a pretty large law firm signed a 20-year lease here in Atlanta, which we've never seen something like that. So the terms are getting, continuing to push out. I don't know what other trends can I tell you? I think that was one that's really like, what's the roof? I hear up in New York, I mean, they might go up to 30 plus years on a term, which just seems like an eternity.
Yeah,
but
it does.
yeah,
Well, if the numbers make sense, that's indicative of what you're seeing in the transactions.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Gotcha. Next question, kind of from a regional perspective, where else have you been, in the Southeast, and kind of what are you seeing there?
Yeah. We just had our tenant rep group conference with Cushman on Dallas. That was last week, and I we've heard they have rates that are well over $100 a foot now. There's a little pocket called Uptown, and they have just blown it out of the water. There was one building that we toured. Can't remember the name of it. It's a stream development. They were at 39 triple net when the building delivered, and they won't do anything for less than 70 triple net. So the nets, triple nets or OpEx, whatever you want to call it, are 22, $23 a foot on top of that. And so yeah, they'll offer about $100 a foot on a 10-year deal, and it's going to take all of 350 to build the space out. So they're holding their ground on concessions, and just the rates continue to climb. So it doesn't seem to be for the whole of Dallas, but there's pockets that are in town that people really want to be in. That everything's bigger in Texas. Like
Yeah.
I realized I had rates that
Including
were
the
high.
leases.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. I mean, just pulling some figures from here in Atlanta, you've got Coda in Midtown that, in our database looks like we're at over $74 per square foot.
Yeah.
The new office, Fourth Ward offices over on the East Side Beltline Trail, beautiful building. They're up over $63 per square foot.
Yeah.
Atlantic Station has one at 71 per square foot. And of course, Interlock and Star Metals, two new buildings, West Midtown, very popular. Those are both 65 and 61 respectively. And that's, coming from CompStak's database.
That's right. Yeah, we're pushing up against 70 in Atlanta. And I remember when I got into business, people were like, we've always been at $30 a foot, maybe 40, but now it's just really continue to push.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Last question before we'll dive into a few other topics. So, sector specific deep dive in Atlanta. You've kind of alluded to a lot of these things, but, talk a little bit about, if there's any tenants and deals that you've signed recently that are interesting, have an interesting storyline.
Yeah.
Things that you thought weren't going to get done or took years to get done. Any kind of deals that you want to share with us that you can share with us.
Yeah. There's two deals that are important. So my submarket, or at least what I'm known for here in Atlanta, is downtown Atlanta, and that it's near and dear to my heart. But as a broker, I'm representing the best interest of a client, and they ultimately have the decision of where they go. So, like, there's probably some real hardcore downtowners. I know who you are, that are not going to like these stories, but they're interesting stories of how companies looked at the market and made decisions for their team. So first one I'll share actually got signed last week. This was C.H. Robinson, a large Fortune 500 logistics company. They had a pretty large presence in downtown Atlanta at 101 Marietta. They looked at the market, and we, did a ton of drive studies, surveys, and they ultimately split into two different locations and put a big office up in Cumberland near the Galleria. And then they put a kind of service office 5,000 or 6,000 feet down at the airport. So for them, it was a long process. But it ultimately, it made more sense. They had their sales team right around that kind of Cumberland area. And then, the rest was like admin and back office people were south of town, and that was just way more accessible place for them. I don't know. I'm trying to think. The economics on the deal are, you'll probably get the comp at some point. I don't think I'm allowed to share it from my end, but we don't know what the building's going to do with it. The economics were extremely compelling. They ended up, it was way below market. It was a building that is owned all cash, and it was probably half of what other people are paying in the market on a direct deal. So, very compelling economics. I'm sure it'll flag something in your system when it comes through. So that was one. The other one that was important from this last year was Leadership Atlanta. If you're familiar with them, they take different executives through this kind of year long process of showing them how the city works, and it's a really great organization. So we were engaged by them. A dynamic that's happening in downtown Atlanta. You have a lot of older office buildings that people are asking the question, can I convert this into something else? And they were kind of in the crosshairs of one of those situations. So Georgia Pacific, they have a monster building. It's way over 1 million square feet, and they occupy maybe around 300,000 or 400,000 feet of it. And there's 8 or 9 tenants that were in the building, and they have been just trying to figure out what to do with this building for years, and nothing really ever came out. I kept hearing rumors like something's coming, something's coming. So our client got a letter, basically said you need to get out, and we want you out by this date. So we started asking questions like, all right, what's going on? What are you planning to do? So they're still assessing, but it sounds like they're going to put a bunch of apartments in the top half of that building, and so they were given a pretty nice termination check, and we went out to market, and they ultimately landed right at Colony Square at Promenade Tower, and that is a whole other conversation. That building, the success that Cousins has had there, but they were small. I mean, they're a little over 3,000 feet, but they signed for well over 10 years. So and we needed that long of a term in order to fit the build out budget. I think their build out was just under $300 a foot. So it's a smaller office, but they wanted something really nice for their team.
It's important to get people to want to come to work every day. I know that's important at CompStak. We signed a new lease, I want to say maybe 3 years ago in New York.
Yeah.
At the trough of COVID deals, I
Sure,
guess.
you got a good one. Yeah.
Or height of COVID deals. And we got a space for the future. I mean, it's a nice big space for us to grow into in Midtown, Chelsea, and it's a great office. If I lived in New York, I would want to come in every day. So that's important to the employers, of course. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned the Cumberland market. Let's talk a little bit about that and kind of what's gone on there. That's a really compelling submarket, given some of the newness of the Braves complex and adjacent buildings and the community that they've created there. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my favorite stat on the Cumberland submarket, 2023, the Galleria, those 5 buildings, did 50% of the Class A office leases. That the inventory it's a little over 2 million feet, but it's only 18% of the whole submarket. So they way out punch their weight. So it's like 26, 27%, 2024, and then around the same. So they're doing a little over, so they're a fifth of the submarket, but doing a quarter of the leases now. But they're almost full. They're 95, 96% occupied. And at that number, they still have 100,000 feet they need to fill. But companies, we were just in a building the other day. They said, 12 months ago, activity was not great, like real quiet over here. But now, I mean, just in the last 6 months, it's really turned on. So I think what's happening up there, the Galleria, where everybody wanted to be, you have 2 things: A, they don't have space, and B, I mean, they'll find you space. They won't like me saying they don't have space for you, but the rates have gone from $30 a foot. Now they're quoting 42, 43. And even some, they've said, companies that are coming out of Midtown, they're used to getting these big TI packages because the rates are higher. So they're like, we'll give you a big TI package, but it's going to be $45 a foot up here, which is very high for that submarket. So Gallery is filled up, and rightfully so. The lobbies are incredible. It feels like a nice hotel when you go there. But now the rest of the submarket's getting some love. And up at Wildwood, a lot of those buildings, they just haven't really got as much attention. They're good for like big corporate locations, but for just a good neighborhood, local in a company, they just want to be right where the attention and excitement are. So that's my commentary on Cumberland. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out over the next 24 months.
Are there any buildings in let's say the South Downtown market downtown that are like clearly outperforming the rest?
Well, I don't know. I 191 is of course the downtown.
Right.
That's it. So I mean, Truist Plaza and 191, they get most of the attention downtown. So obviously 100 Peachtree, they have Georgia's Own, Boston Consulting Group, and a couple other really great tenants. But it is a very slow submarket. I think all leasing that happened was just a couple 100,000 feet last year in downtown. And for a similar inventory submarket, you should be seeing closer to like 1 million square feet. So the velocity is I mean, just maybe 20 or 30% of what other pockets of town are seeing. So that, I mean, if there's outperformers, there's ones that are actually getting leases signed. I think the bar is just different down there. Yeah.
And then, of course, Centennial Yards is coming. I know you're paying very close attention to that. That's an exciting development for the whole city.
Yeah. Talk about long leases. That Live Nation, that's a 30-year lease. I mean, that's such a big deal for that project. I mean, the water's clear. It's a great name. It's like 130,000 foot event stage. I know they say 5,300 seats, but the size of that building, it's pretty sizable. But yeah, sorry, I jumped in. So yeah, I mean, Centennial Yard, very excited about it. I think they're going to do really well, but it's pulling the epicenter downtown from that Peachtree core where all the Portman stuff, Mart and 191, that's always been, that's the business district. But just if you're going downtown, I think it's just going to keep gravitating towards the stadium. This is where people go. It's the conventions, concerts, and championships. The 3 C's. That's what downtown has going for right now.
That conventions,
concerts,
championships. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah. And then is Live Nation different than the Cosm?
Yeah, very different.
So 2 different concepts.
Yeah. So Cosm had their like construction kickoff, and that happened just a couple of weeks ago. So there's a billionaire out of Texas, I think out of Dallas, who flew in with his CEO for this Cosm experiences. He was an NFL, I can't remember what position he played, but he's like a all-American guy, like 6'8", just like in big personality too. Yeah. He wore a cowboy hat. So they have one in Dallas and one in LA, and this is their 3rd location here in Atlanta. So that, I think it was like a 20-year lease that they signed, but it's basically the Sphere, but it doesn't have the screen on the outside. But we've all seen the TikToks where, people are in the Sphere and it's like U2's playing and the screen's going all around them. Like it's that, just at a smaller scale. So it's going to be amazing. There's like a bunch of different bars and like experiences within it, but the main event is like this big screen. So,
yeah. And do you foresee the development of Centennial Yards drawing more corporate lease signings to the South downtown market and, helping drive some of that activity that hasn't been really going on?
Yeah, I think what we've seen, the pattern is there's always developers that'll promise these big things, but until it's delivered, they have a hard time getting office leases signed. So I think my take is once this retail and stuff gets established, they've got the Mitchell that it's 400 units of apartments. Once people start moving in there, there's daytime vibrancy. I think that's when you're going to see a lot more of the office leases come back. So you've got 101 Marietta that's on the market right now. That was where C.H. Robinson was. That might glean some of the activity, but I mean, Centennial Yards had plans for a couple of office buildings, and they kind of put those on hold. But who knows? They might bring those back as their main entertainment district kind of comes of age, and then they can dust off those plans. But you have the center. And I guess the one that if I were a tenant and I'm looking for, the best deal possible, like literally in the center, there are, legacy CNN spaces that are great. Like they were built out in 2019, like right before COVID. And which from like a big picture standpoint, they're like different departments are talking to each other because they already knew they were leaving that building, but still they're building out brand new space. So there's nice floors in that building. So if I'm a company, like, oh, I can go there for way cheaper than any brand new building down there with Centennial Yards, it's going to be $60 a foot, like minimum, maybe 70. So go to the center, you're going to have a ton of retail, and then right out your front door, you're going to have the entertainment district. So
yeah,
if you're looking for a deal,
good location.
That's my hot take.
Yeah. Well, happy to hear that, and excited to see what comes here in the future.
Yeah, it's looking very, very positive. I think there's a lot of good things ahead. So,
well, great. Well, hey, appreciate you being on the segment today.
Yeah, Brian, it was a lot of fun.
It's been great insight. Appreciate all our friends and family at home joining us today. Don't forget to like us on social media. So we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn. We're on Spotify. Check us out. Again, this is the 5x5 podcast with CompStak. I'm your host, Brian Caldwell, and we'll see you next time.